When I last covered Bloodlance, I was severely undergeared and had to cut a lot of corners in the build in order to make it able to do Nightmare 100s. But now that I have amazing gear and I'm able to really play the game in its full in-game version, I'm very surprised at how much better it's performing. This is a very solid build. I'm able to farm 100s with ease, and I'm also able to kill bosses like Lilith in a decent amount of time. Now, this build isn't the highest damage or most insane build, but it's a very solid build that has no problem clearing the hardest content in the game. Due to the addition of Lidless Wall, we're able to cut a lot of our survivability in favor of more damage. In particular, these damage changes allow us to ramp much quicker in AoE than we could before, meaning we're able to clear packs much faster. Our single target is also slightly improved, and with that being said, let's get into the build and break down exactly what's new. So we're going to be starting with this skill tree. This build is set up to be extremely tanky and still have the damage to clear things quickly. It's a very easy build to play. It's extremely chill. You just kind of run through things and you clear stuff. It's just really nice to clear. It is very unconditional compared to other builds. Like with Infinimus, sometimes single target can feel a little awkward. With Bone Spear, things like Suppression can feel extremely awkward to deal with. But Bloodlance is just very consistent. It's just consistently going through dungeons. It feels very good to play. So let's get into the skill tree here. So we're going to be running Hemorrhage. Hemorrhage is going to give us extra Blood Orb generation and extra Essence generation each time we pick up a Blood Orb. And it's also going to get the increased attack speed for single target generation. So in AoE, we can just click Hemorrhage once, get a ton of Essence, and in single target, we can sustain channel this to get loads of Essence pretty quickly. We're going to be doing 5 points in Bloodlance, going all the way to Supernatural Bloodlance. Every 6th attack, we're going to overpower the Bloodlance, which is really nice. And then we're also going to get the Blood Orbs, which the Blood Orbs are pretty useful for sustaining our health and Fortify. You'll see as we get deeper into this how much Blood Orb and Fortify generation, all that we have. We're going to be putting 3 points into Hued Flesh. This is primarily for single target because we need the corpses in order to target them with corpse tendrils. And in single target, sometimes the corpse generation is not there, even with the blood mist and stuff. So this is just going to help us out quite a bit. And in AoE, it's just going to give us a few extra corpses to work with, which is not a bad thing. We're going to be going into Blood Mist, all the way to Ghastly Blood Mist. Now, Blood Mist isn't necessarily that amazing, but there's not really that tremendous of useful skills to use, and it's also going to be really useful for like Lilith, or if you get caught in a bad position, and it's going to heal you up pretty decently and give you a lot of Fortify because of some blood stuff we're going to get into later. So it ends up being a pretty decent skill. We're going to put 3 points into Grim Harvest so that each time we consume a corpse, we get 6 Essence. So this build is going to be running the Lidless Wall Osseous Gale combo. So our Lidless Wall is going to spawn loads of Bone Storms all over the place. Osseous Gale is going to cause those Bone Storms to consume corpses to increase the duration of your main Bone Storm. So it's easy to get 100% uptime on Bone Storm in AoE. And then Grim Harvest is going to cause you to generate 6 Essence every time one of those eats a corpse. So this is going to give us like infinite Essence in AoE. And then we're going to be running Fueled by Death, which is going to give us a 9% multiplier with 100% uptime very easily. We're going to be running Death's Embrace. Because of the way that these Nightmare dungeons end up playing out, you're oftentimes going to be in melee range, so might as well just run Death's Embrace over Death's Reach. Both are okay. I just generally prefer Death's Embrace personally. We're going to be running 3 points into Amplify Damage for a 12% damage multiplier. And then we're going to be grabbing Decrepify, Abhorrent Decrepify for the damage reduction, for the cooldown reduction, all of that stuff, everything you know and love. So getting into our blood skills, we're pretty much just going to be filling this out. So we're going to be taking 2 points into Gruesome Mending for the 20% healing, 3 points into Coalesce Blood for 18% damage multiplier, 3 points into Drained Vitality for the Fortify generation, and keep in mind this is going to make Lucky Hit pretty important in order to generate as much Fortify as possible. Tides of Blood is going to give us another multiplier on our Overpower, and then Transfusion is going to give us a chance on hit, which again, Lucky Hit, to spawn Blood Orbs. Now, Blood Orbs, as I mentioned before, are really useful for the health and Fortify, but we're not running the full Blood Orb kit that you would see in some other builds, but they're still really useful. And for this reason, we're going to be running Corpse Tendrils and going to Blighty Corpse Tendrils to spawn more orbs. So the thing is that we have enough, like, Essence and enough cooldown reduction on our ultimate that we don't really need to run the whole Blood Orb suite, but the extra healing and Fortify is going to keep us full health and tanky so that we can get as much value out of our Overpower as possible. We're also going to be running Stand Alone for 18% damage reduction and Momentum Mori for increased crit chance and crit damage. Bone Storm is going to give us a massive shield. I mean, you guys know the drill. Huge shield, damage reduction, and crit chance. This ability is just broken as ever. And we're going to be running Wrath's Vigor because this is obviously the best Keystone passive or Overpower. And because of the amount of blood orbs we're spawning, this cooldown is actually going to be quite low. And so we're going to be able to pump out Overpowers, especially in AoE. Moving on to the items. So for my helmet, I'm going to be running the Harlequin Crest. Obviously, not everybody has one. If you don't have one, then you should look to run either a normal helmet with Aspect of Might or Godslayer Crown. Both are decent alternatives. But if you have Harlequin, it's your best item and it's not even close. On our chest piece, we're going to be running the Aspect of Shielding Storm. And this is just going to obviously make our Bone Storm give us loads of shielding, especially when paired with Lidless Wall, which the Lidless Wall is going to obviously spawn loads of Bone Storms, and then each Bone Storm's hitting everything, and they're all generating barrier. It's ridiculous. And then for our pants, we're going to be running Tybalt's Will. So the Tybalt's Will is going to give us Essence Generation, which is really nice, and a 40% damage multiplier. Now, these pants don't have the tankiness on them that you typically would need to survive, but through other means, we're able to get the survivability that we need, so we can get away with running these pants. And then for my gloves, I'm running the Osseous Gale, as we discussed. And then on my boots, I'm running Flicker Step. This is going to give us much better uptime on Bone Storm, which can kind of matter sometimes. I would say that these aren't required. You could definitely replace these with a movement speed aspect instead, and it would be just as good, if not, it'd probably be better for speeds, but I think Flicker Step just makes the build a little bit more consistent, and it has the 20% damage reduction from close enemies, which is insanely good. For our necklace, we're going to be running the Banished Lord's Talisman. This is just going to give us a massive damage multiplier, and resource generation, and crit chance, and ranks of Bloodlands. So this is just an incredibly powerful item, and it's especially strong when you pair with the Aspect of Grasping Veins, which will give us an increased crit chance whenever we corpse tendrils. And because, we have Bone Storm giving us 20%, we have 20% for Grasping Veins, we have 8% from Warrior Sacrifice because of the passive, and we end up getting so much crit chance that we're pretty much guaranteed to crit if you have the right rolls on all your gear. And so it's just this necklace just becomes a 120% damage multiplier, which is amazing. On our other ring, we're going to be running the Aspect of Hungering Blood. So this is just going to let us ramp much quicker than you would normally be able to, because you need to get a Blood Lance into every enemy, and the Aspect of Hungering Blood will speed that up dramatically. And especially when you're also running Gore Quills. And the reason we're running both, so it's not that useful to run both in single target. In fact, you want to run neither in single target technically. But even if we're running both, we can still kill bosses really quickly, and this will massively accelerate the speed that we kill trash. And I don't think that you necessarily have to have a swap for this build. I was able to kill Uber Lilith with this setup, even just using Lidless Wall. It wasn't really an issue. So I think the build is perfectly fine as it is. For Book of the Dead, we're going to be sacrificing Skirmishers for the crit chance. We're going to be sacrificing Bone Mages for the overpower damage. And then for our Golem, we're going to be getting the Iron Golem sacrifice. It's really convenient that we can use this now. And with the 100% crit chance, this is a ridiculous multiplier. Our Paragon board is pretty straightforward. We're going to be running Essence for the increased crit damage. We're going to be running Sacrificial for the increased damage. We're going to be running Bloodbath for increased overpower damage. 35% multiplier is very good. We're going to be running Blood Drinker for the Fortify generation. Now, this isn't necessarily required, but I think that this build can struggle every once in a while to get its Fortify up, and because you have so many damage reduction while fortified rolls, it's really useful to have this, just to make sure that you're always topped up. And you have enough damage to clear 100s pretty easily anyway. We're also going to be running Scent of Death. We're going to be eating every corpse that we see, so this is going to be a 15% damage multiplier. We're going to be running Blood Begets Blood, which is a 15% damage multiplier with 100% uptime. We're going to be running Undaunted. So I noticed that every once in a while, it just felt like this build barely didn't have enough survivability when I was playing it. And when you toss on Undaunted, the extra 10% helps quite a bit. And then we're going to be running the Amplify for an extra 10% against cursed enemies. And finally, Flesh Eater for 40% after eating 5 corpses, which because of the Osseous Gale Lidless Wall combo, we're eating every corpse that we see. Lastly, let's get into the Vampiric powers. We're going to be running Domination for a damage multiplier against stunned enemies, and because we're spamming corpse tendrils, enemies are stunned quite often. We're going to be running Ravenous, so this is a 50% attack speed modifier. So this is absolutely crazy, and this is pretty much just going to be our best Vampiric power. We're going to be running Prey on the Weak for a 16% damage multiplier against enemies, and then if you combine that with Metamorphosis, Basically, every time you evade through enemies, you're going to apply Vampiric Curse. Vampiric Curse applies Vulnerable, so you have guaranteed Vulnerable up on everybody. And then we're going to be running Sanguine Brace for increased crit chance, but also for the Fortified Generation on killing enemies. Like I said, it's really important to always be fully fortified, and this just makes the build feel a bit smoother. You can find a link to the full build in the description below. And if you notice any inconsistencies, I tried really hard this time to not have any, but if you notice any, let me know, I'll fix them. And anyway, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.